So we're back at y'all from gloomy London, England, with the Tower Bridge behind us. I'm here with Professor Wilson, and you know us, we just have conversations, things that are on our minds that we talk about, and I have an idea and I actually want to run it by him. I'm going to be leaving London, go somewhere else, like always, and you're going to be going to Dakar, Bangladesh.
Yes!
No, that's Dakar, Senegal. Dhaka, Bangladesh.
Yes.
And you're going to be keynoting where?
I'm going to talk at the Bangladesh Brand Forum. It's their 10th year. They've got a communications summit in association with Cannes, and I'm keynoting in front of a lot of advertising professionals. And I'm basically going to talk about how we can make Bangladesh rock.
So is it, okay, go ahead, go on.
No, I mean, I think one of the things for me is that, everyone knows that stuff is made in Bangladesh, right? And everyone knows that there are so many amazing chefs around the world, a lot of them who are Bangladeshi.
Yeah.
But if you look at the top global brands, they're all coming from the West, from North America, from Europe.
Sure.
So I want to inspire people to get them to think that Bangladesh should become a hotspot when it comes to brand development, and I want to see a global Bangladeshi brand in the next decade.
And you're saying that because they're developing the expertise of producing all these brand name clothing from that country? Is that what you're trying to say?
Correct.
Okay.
That knowledge has got to transfer.
And just for everyone out there, when they say a communications summit or something, what does that mean, a communications summit?
So, I mean, we're going to see advertising people from industry who want to be looking at kind of the integrated marketing comms approach, because...
Wait, hold on. See, that's what I'm trying to talk about.
Okay.
What's integrated comms? I'm saying, what does communications mean in marketing? People, I think, understand what marketing is, but when you say communications, what is communications in marketing?
So for me, one of the things is that, I started my advertising career in London, right? So in London, things are very simple. You have advertising agencies, PR agencies, branding agencies, digital marketing.
Got it.
But I had to relearn a lot of stuff when you go to the Middle East or Asia, because what they term as branding or marketing or advertising is not necessarily what we would term. We could say, well, no, that's a sponsorship deal, or that's a direct response campaign. So I'm kind of expecting that, you've got comms people that could be doing advertising, could be doing social media, could be doing branding, and probably doing all of them at the same time.
So communication then is when the company in one way or another communicates with the consumer in any way, shape, form, or fashion. That's considered communications. So that could be an Instagram post, that can be a brochure, that can be a website. That's all under the rubric or the idea of communications.
Well, I would say, okay, if you look at it from a Western European context, comms people generally are B2B. When you talk about comms, that's internal comms, external.
Okay.
But when you go to Asia, a lot of comms we would consider to be business to consumer, advertising, marketing, stuff like that. So they just see communication in a very kind of wide sense. So I'm going to hit them with some behavioral psychology that could be B2B, but could easily be B2C as well. Asia just wants to make money.
Yeah,
that's what it's about. It's about making money.
That's why in about a month, we're going to be back in KL speaking about Muslim brands or whatever. So we're always there in Southeast Asia, we're always there in Asia, because the burgeoning, the growing, the flourishing business and industries that are coming from there, they're doing a lot of production. But I don't want to bore y'all with that. I have a thought that's been mulling, and just been philosophizing in my own mind, and I'll want to just get your thoughts on it. But it's the whole concept of expertise, right? Okay. We're here in all these different venues and different conventions and conferences where we're speaking on panels with this expert who's this expert and this expert in this industry, and the idea of expert has been, I guess, just marinating in my mind. And the phrase that everyone uses is that, experts are someone who puts 10,000 hours into it, and this is someone who gets it. This is someone who will be successful. This is someone who's put in the hard time. But then, this is so odd, he and I, we talk music a lot. And we were talking about the Beatles, right? Yeah. We're here in London, England, Apple Records, Abbey Road, and out of the Fab Four, who's still alive? McCartney, of course. Okay, so okay, no, George Harrison passed,
unfortunately.
Yeah, and Lennon passed. Ravi Shankar with the star. And he was instrumental. What is that in the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club? What album was that? Let It Be?
It did a lot to open up people's minds with regards to kind of the Eastern way of doing music. And I used to play bass, and I played with tabla players and dog players and wali singers and stuff.
It was thinking about actually Paul McCartney, one of my favorite bass players of all time.
Okay.
And we were talking about how these guys have been writing sophisticated lyrics at such a young age, right? Experts are someone who put in 10,000 hours, right? And these four would easily fall into that range. Paul McCartney's still alive. And I believe Paul McCartney's still making music. I don't know. He just did something with Kanye. I remember when he did
Nirvana as well.
Yeah, he's been doing. During their time, though, they were charting #1. This is someone who has over 10,000 hours of expertise of work, who now makes him an expert. How come now he's in his 25th hour of being a musician? How come he's not coming out with #1s? My point is that you can have the hours, you can have all that, but it was just in my mind about the concept of expertise. We're here in London. Usain Bolt, they said is going to be his last race, and he goes out third. I know there's a little bit, because there's physical, you get older, this and that, but it's this whole thing that he and I were talking about, and I kept thinking about expertise. What do you think, what makes you an expert? Do you have to tell people you're, do people just know you're an expert? Is it this, as we say, game recognizes game, someone who knows? How, I just started thinking, these guys who have been writing songs for so many years, in their 20,000th hour, they can no longer get anywhere to the success where they've been, and that's why I feel that a lot has to do with luck. You can put in the hours and still be, as they say here, rubbish. What are your thoughts on this? Like, do you believe in the 10,000 hours? Do you believe that you've got to put in that time to become an expert? Could you just be gifted with that and just the insight?
I believe in the 10,000 hours, and I think it's a good mental picture or a good target to get yourself to a situation where you've got enough hours, enough airtime, enough monotonous activities that hone your skills to make you an expert. What I'm interested in is, okay, so when you reach the 10,000 hours, what happens now? Or even you could ask the question, how do you recognize an expert, right? So I want to talk about a couple of things. I mean, like, a lot of us, well, you've got an MBA, I've got an MBA, and there's lots of language in business textbooks or articles where they use sport analogies, right? First past the post, hit the ground running, target audience, all those sorts of things. And that gets you so far, but for me, I think it's actually a flawed concept, because when you talk about expert in that context, and you mentioned like Paul McCartney, essentially is discussing winning and losing, right? So you're suggesting that to be an expert means that you've won.
No.
I'll come back, because and it's not what you're saying, but it's kind of like how people view experts, which is like, after those 10,000 hours, if you're not getting all of the answers right, or you're not the person on top of everyone else, then you've fallen, right? And my philosophy is kind of like this. Well, yeah, sure, if you want to be competitive, like you're a football manager of a football team, and that's why they could have somebody with a pedigree of trophies, and they could like sack him, like Ranieri from Leicester when he got them like Premier League title, and the next year he was gone, right?
That's soccer for the Americans. Just talking about
soccer. So he fell off. Now for me, which is why, like, when I got older, I got into martial arts. I started to think, well, my sensei, who he passed away this year actually, right? But he was like late 70s, martial arts for over 70 years. About that tall. Doesn't have the muscle mass that I do, right? Doesn't have the youth that I do. But he can still kick my ass. Right? So I was fascinated by the fact that when you can't rely upon your muscles anymore, how are you still able to succeed? Technique, but it's beyond technique, because then you're now talking about, you've seen so many things before that you're able to predict and see things quicker than other people, right? So you can move and switch quicker than anybody else, or you only do enough in order to get the job done, rather than expend your energy, your resources, your emotions, all those sorts of things. And that's why I think that sometimes we hurt ourselves in business because we think about things in a too competitive way. Because if it's a lifelong journey of basically battling yourself, and trying to learn quicker, faster, better, be more intuitive than you were the previous year, then all those other things like, well, did I get a number one song, don't matter, right? Having a number one brand,
it does, right? Because if you don't, then you don't get money. You don't make money. You don't go on the road. No one's buying your merch. So that's why I was...
Wu-Tang, Hendrix, right? You know, Nirvana, Soundgarden, like, you know, there's loads of bands, like, you talk about music that I dig, but they weren't the highest sell. Like, Hendrix has never been topped, right? He's the best guitarist of all time, right? But that didn't mean that he sold more albums than X or Y or than this boy band or whatever it is, but he had something in terms of expertise, authenticity, credibility that transcends the here and now and carries through. And to me, I mean, a lot of people will never know whether they're experts or not because they won't have had enough airtime or to see whether they transcend those concepts. You know, maybe they don't fly today, but you know, who is around to say I told you so 10 years from now? Like, you know, I've written a couple of journal papers where it's taken like 10 years to then say, oh, well, what I was saying 10 years ago that you thought was a little bit like, I don't know. Well, it's starting to happen, right? So I think that sometimes, I think that we look for the wrong things when it comes to like trying to establish who is an expert, you know? But I do think that it's worth striving towards expertise and excellence. But how you recognize who is a guru or an expert?
Because to me, it's like, so for example, let's going back. So for example, I would want a pilot that has flown 15,000 hours.
Right.
But when you're 45 years old in the NBA, you have more than 10,000 hours, you know, but it's your time to retire. That's because physically you're falling apart. And then when you get to music, like this is someone who's been writing music for so long, but he can't get another one for the life of him. You also have what they say in music, the sophomore jinx, right? Freshman album, your first album, you do good. Second one, complete flop. That's what they say. First, do it the first time, you're good. Or do it the first time, you're lucky. Do it the second time, you're good. And that was my thing that I've been thinking about, because we're sitting here, and I don't know if it's just people being called experts by other people or if people just taking on that title, but I talk to them and you realize this person is not an expert. Like, I'm not at all impressed by what this person is saying, and I'm trying to think, is this only in business? Because now I'm thinking about it, sports, it's different because your body you start to just fall apart. But in terms of a pilot, before he becomes 80, his vision's impaired and all that, if my pilot has 23,000 hours of flying time, I'd rather take him than someone that's only flown like 3,000. So that's why being in this space where we're talking everywhere, we're all these in different conventions, and oh, this guy's an expert in this, or this guy's a forethought, and then you go and engage with that person, and you realize.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, when you talk about a pilot, you're talking about technical expertise. But if you want to talk about other things like emotional intelligence or intellectual expertise, those are the things where you start to separate people, right? Because you're right, if you want a pilot that's done X number of hours, then they should be able to read different seasons and all that kind of stuff. It's a bit like if you have somebody in advertising, they've planned so many campaigns, they've spent so much money, they can execute, you know, in their sleep, right? They know best practice, due diligence, what to look out for, deadlines, they can do that in their sleep. But the intellectual expert, right? When you know, and this is kind of, it's that aspect of the Beatles that you're talking about, not like they can technically
because look, they were killing it right when they came to the Ed Sullivan Show. How old were they? They were young, and they took over. We call it the British invasion, right? Those guys didn't have 10,000 hours. That's why I'm still not really easy with the concept of 10,000 hours. Sometimes you're just gifted. Sometimes you're a fast student. Sometimes you just pick it up. People who are industry heads will meet someone that's young and be like, wow, that guy's a prodigy. Wow, that girl, she has it. And that's what I'm trying to say, is that these people, they're old heads. They've been in there for a long time. But you talk to them, you're like, bro, you're so irrelevant. Like, you don't even know what you're talking about.
An expert has a certain amount of consistency, which is why it draws from the 10,000 hours, because it's not just a lucky shot, right? You are able to, you've got a pedigree where on several occasions you've been able to deliver something which puts you head and shoulders above everyone else. Now, if you think about kind of in that intellectual capacity, for me, an expert as well is someone that creates their own lane. Right? So the mistake or the challenge for people is, if you want to become an expert, then the sort of training that you do is pretty much what everyone else does, right? You eat the same diet, you get the qualifications, you do the same air miles, you go to the same places, and then that gets you 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
But you haven't created your own lane, right? Because an expert then, the transcendent aspect is the fact that they almost, once you've got the 10,000 hours, you have to rip up the rule book.
Yeah, you become your own master. Yeah.
Right, so that basically means that everything that you learned before, or a lot of it, you just have to disregard. Because you trust the change. Because then, how can you become a guru in, like, I don't know, advertising, or a philosopher, or something like that, if you then just trot out the same stuff that everyone is doing day in, day out.
Innovation is key.
Right.
So that's a key thing. So that's a great point I never even thought of, is that if you're an expert, you've got to be coming with innovative thoughts, ideas, like, wow, I never thought about that. But a lot of these people who are considered experts, it's like, they're like parakeets, man. They're like parrots. They're just saying the same things over and over. And I'm like, bro, you're not saying anything new.
The 10,000 hours is also supposed to harden you up so that you develop a skin. If you are gonna stress people, or you're gonna rip up the book, I believe experts should make people feel uncomfortable so that they think, what the hell? Like, that makes no sense. I've never heard that. Why on earth would that be the case, right?
Yeah.
And that's the risk. But if you're an expert, it's not a risk because it's your love, it's your passion. You don't care. You've got your own lane, right? Everything you sell, right? And that becomes a challenge for business. Then you're after, you think, we want to target, let's say, for example, a Muslim millennial, and you can anybody with a pulse who's of a certain age, of the same religion and everything, because you're afraid to exclude, or you don't want to talk about the touchy bits with regards to politics and that, then you're not going to deliver expertise. You're just going to deliver kind of a stocking filler, you know?
So we're actually like on a barge,
There's a cruise.
and there's a cruise that's about to land and probably undock. And I don't want to make this really long, so I'm going to end with one question.
Okay.
So I still have an issue with the 10,000 hours, but you brought up a good point in terms of innovation, being a thought leader.
Yeah.
Last question I'm going to end with. Metallica or Guns N' Roses?
Wow. Trujillo, bass player extraordinaire for Metallica. But from a branding aspect, Metallica is a wicked brand because there's been no rebrand. It's the same logo. It's lasted for decades.
Well, Guns N' Roses too.
Yeah.
You know their logo.
Yeah, but their logo, Metallica's logo rocks, right? And their t-shirts rock. But for bands, for pure swagger, bursting on the scene, it's got to be Guns N' Roses. It's like,
So you're Guns N' Roses.
Guns N' Roses.
Even though you said Trujillo, you're.
Appetite for Destruction was just such.
I know where I was when I first saw that video.
Welcome to the jungle.
Welcome to the jungle. But anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. I wanted to keep it under 20 minutes, and I did. We'll see you. We'll be in KL, be speaking at a conference there, and we'll hit you with some random thought that I have. And if you guys have any thoughts or ideas or anything that you guys want us to talk about, then be sure to hit us up, leave a comment, be sure to subscribe. Peace.
Go to Sissy Cruise. It's good.